So the whole, this is our first one. So Carol told yours. You're right. So because of that,
There's so much emotion.
Yeah, we can do that afterwards.
Glad when it's over.
Nobody understood why they're doing this, but they're making a case now. Yeah. So, oh, I didn't know that. That was really, that I didn't catch. That was Stafford. Right. Because, okay. See, I missed that. I didn't see that. First one.
So where we are, it's right there. Where the parking lot is and the light, and then small trees come back.
Tim, did you and Al like email each other about dress code? So I didn't see that email.
They did.
I guess.
First house, the guy from that retired. I guess this second house is
How that seemed from the check.
yeah, they just rebuilt another train. Started out at 6. Would
How you
I?
doing? Good to see you.
How are you? Good. Good to see you. Not all here from you. Take a look and say, you almost had deer in the headlights.
It's really paranoid. If you
Okay. Also, everybody else is here. Ask them if they
Yeah, it's.
I'm good. First, I'm good. Now starting in a moment.
Okay. What are we supposed to do to make the case?
Well, I'll read my staff report. explain what it is you're asking, why you're asking, questions you're asking, how we feel. They'll allow you to make a decision right here, or if they're kind of conflicted, they may go back. And still come out.
Most people.
Yeah, we use it over there.
Well, that's
Right. Well, you gotta do then to sell.
Yeah, it's kind of nice, isn't it? You can't get out quick, right?
Basically, you guys just try and get
okay. Should we bring these guys? Folks, I think we're going to start down on it.
It's quick.
You should probably start off with not too bad.
Oh, thank you. I'm impressed. And it's Chabad as opposed to Chabad, yeah. No, that is nice. That's actually nice. I should let you say that. This person did that. Okay, we have this. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Sylvania Township Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. First thing we'd like to call to order, and now we'd like to do the roll call.
Mr. Schlachter?
Here.
Mr. Halberd?
Here.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Hayes?
Do we have a motion? Has everybody seen the September 12th meeting minutes? And if we have, do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Mr. Schlachter?
Yes.
Mr. Halberd?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any old business that anybody has? And not hearing any, we'll move to new business. One thing we're going to do, if you'll indulge us a bit, when you see item 4 and 5, we're going to reverse the order. We're going to take 5 first because we think it'll probably take less time than the other case. So if you all don't mind that, we're going to go through that one, and then we'll come back to the other. A couple of quick orders of business. Anybody who's going to think they're going to testify today, can you hear me okay? Is this thing on? Okay. Raise your right hand if you think you might want to say, even if you have any chance you're going to say something, so I don't have to re-swear you in. Okay, do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you. And one other order of business is that there's 4 of us here. Typically, we have 5. Our other regular board member and our alternate, neither of them could be here today. This is not our normal meeting day. So I'm pointing that out because for anything you've got before us, you'll need 3 of the votes of the 4. So if some reason somebody wants to defer, we would grant that if they prefer to have a full board. So I'm just pointing that out. But if not, you don't need unanimous, but you will need 3 votes. Okay? So unless there's anything else at this point, I think we will go on to the first case. which is a variance request for a rear setback from 35 feet required to 30 feet provided for the property located at 3240 Fairbanks Avenue. And I will ask for the staff report, please.
Section 703 of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution requires a 35-foot rear setback for main buildings within an RA suburban residential zone district. The single-family dwelling on the subject property, built in 1934, is currently sited 54 feet from the rear eastern property line. The applicants wish to construct a 24-foot by 32-foot attached garage to the rear of the dwelling and are asking for a variance of 5 feet in order to site the addition 30 feet from the rear property line. Staff finds no special conditions, circumstances, or hardships to the property that would necessitate a variance from the requirements of Section 703 of the zoning resolution. The applicants can construct an attached garage up to a depth of 19 feet from the dwelling and still meet the 35-foot rear setback requirement. Additionally, a detached garage of the applicant's desired size may be constructed on the property. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the 5-foot variance request to the rear setback requirement of 35 feet in an RA suburban residential for the property located at 3240 Fairbanks Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Any questions yet from the staff report?
No.
Okay, if there's none, is the applicant here? Would you like to? Okay, can we ask you to state your name and sign in, please?
The mic's on.
Oh, mine's on. Yeah, I just didn't hear his.
Does it need to be turned up? This here? It's
Oh,
on
there it is.
here.
Yeah, it's on, it's on.
That's on.
Far back area, or just the ones facing?
Of the site plan?
No, of either the neighborhood. Yeah, there we go, that one.
Like that one?
Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, okay, is there, did you have anything you wanted to say on your behalf of your application?
I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Okay, I guess, one question I do have is, have you looked at any alternative design that you would need a variance to do this on this site?
To keep the whole purpose of having an attached garage.
Okay.
Now that we have the variance, I understand we need to prove a hardship on our part. We improving the property, we tend to do it at one time. To have a detached garage is a slip hazard, weather for my family. I just feel the attached garage is a better fit entirely for everyone. If we had another alternative, then I suppose that would come if this was exhausted. If we wanted to approve.
Is this a two-car garage?
Now, it's going to be pretty crowded, probably over 2 cars, maybe the next few room for it.
Are you asking this, proposed garage addition? And it says future addition, are you asking for both right now approval of?
Well, the variance would be, all right, would be, once he would be given the variance, then you can do another one.
Because it's just
It's
a
the same-
rear
It's the
yard.
same variance, yeah, he's asking for the one variance, yeah.
The one variance would cover everything for the future.
I see.
Is it not practical if you shrunk it by 5 feet?
Excuse me?
Is it not practical if you shrunk it by 5 feet?
The issue is that when you see the back side of the building, when they built the building, they placed it in the center of both lots, and then they put an offset in it that juts out into the property, so that if we were to go with the 35-foot original back set, then your garage is like 19, 18 or 19 feet deep, which isn't practical. You know, if you have another 5 feet, you have 24 foot to come back, and it's a large enough garage to put a vehicle into as a rear load. That was our thing.
Have you considered taking the garage and swinging it like this? What does he have a side yard there, Daryl?
I'm sorry?
What would be a side yard here? If you had garage and full space rather than... 7.5 feet?
10 feet.
10 feet? And
He's got 24 from the
so you
house.
only have 14 feet? Okay.
Everything I'm seeing. I see it's attached in there. Okay. Any other questions for this gentleman? Is there anybody else here to speak on behalf of this matter? Any other questions?
Yeah, have you spoke to your neighbors or anything? Have any feedback from your neighbors?
Yeah, everybody's okay with it.
And butters went out?
Right.
Okay.
So I guess I have one question. So what would be the impact of making that a two-car garage? Because this is 3 cars, right, that fit on the side, or is it 5 cars?
Usually it's from the south going north. That'll be 30 foot going that way, just in the first part. But we're going to load from the back and go in.
Oh,
We're
okay.
going to have 3 bays wide there.
I got you.
There's no other way to load the garage. I don't know any other way that you could configure it.
You're saying if you
Yeah.
have it too, we could maybe go side yard? Yeah, so if it was reduced to 2, you would be able to, I'm not sure why you couldn't do a side yard.
Side load?
Side yard. Okay, no, it is what it is. Want to make a motion, you want to discuss?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve a variance request for rear setback from 35 feet required to 30 feet provided for the property located at 3240 Fairbanks Avenue, parcel number 7847744.
Second.
Mr. Schlechter?
No.
Mr. Hubbard?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr.
No.
Hayes?
So it's a no. Thank you. Okay, on to the next case. We've got some folks here, obviously, that are going to want to testify, which is great. The only thing we would ask is if somebody's made a point, let's not have 5 or 6 people come up and give that exact same point. We want to give everybody a chance to speak and say what they have to say. So we'll kind of do this in an orderly fashion. So let's begin with the request, which is a conditional use for a semi-public use within an A4 district for the property located at 2728 King Road. And can we have the staff report, please?
Yes. Subject property at 2728 North King Road is currently zoned A4 Rural Residential. The primary use of this property has been that of a place of worship since 1974 when the current structure was constructed. At that time, a semi-public use such as a church was a permitted use in residential zone districts within the township, and did not require approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals. In 1978, the Sylvania Township zoning resolution was amended, removing semi-public uses from the permitted uses category and placing them into the conditional uses category within residential zone districts. The applicant has occupied the existing facility for the past 2 years as a community center and a place of religious assembly. As they have been using the existing structure, the use has been allowed. However, the applicant wishes to demolish the existing 4,200 square foot structure and redevelop the site with a 9,758 square foot building. By redeveloping the site, the applicant is thus required to conform to current zoning regulations and submit to the conditional use process. In July 2016, the site plans for the proposed project were reviewed by the following entities: the Lucas County Engineer, Lucas County Sanitary Engineer, Lucas County Plan Commission staff, Sylvania Township Fire Department, Sylvania Township Zoning Department, and comments from those agencies can be found in the September 28, 2016 Lucas County Plan Commission staff report and have been addressed by the applicant. On August 24th, this conditional use request was before the Lucas County Plan Commission for their review. The staff for that commission advised the body to vote to recommend approval of the request, but the decision was deferred to the following month in order to allow the applicant to address some concerns of nearby residents. On September 28th, the LCPC again heard the request, which the staff maintained the recommendation of approval, but the LCPC voted to make no recommendation. The proposed project, as indicated on the site plan, meets or exceeds all requirements of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution in regards to setbacks, height, parking ratio, and drive aisle width. There will be 2 access drives with ingress-egress to the site entirely via King Road. A traffic impact study was not required by the Lucas County Engineer's Office. The building footprint represents a density of 6,061 square feet per acre compared to that of 7,400 to 9,800 square feet per acre for most of the surrounding residential. Places of worship, as with other semi-public and public uses such as schools, public or private, parks, libraries, and cultural centers, are considered fundamental components of a community. They often blend favorably into residential areas because of their pleasant settings and low negative impacts on the surrounding area. Staff finds that this proposed conditional use is harmonious with the current uses in the area, should not alter the general vicinity or negatively impact neighboring residential properties, and is consistent with the zoning resolution. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the conditional use request for a semi-public use in an A4 rural residential zone district for the property located at 2728 North King Road.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the staff's report? And if no questions on that, we'll see if there's somebody here on behalf of the applicant to speak. And also, so we know, all that this board is hearing is the conditional use. So we're really here to deal with one issue, just so everybody knows. That's what this application is for. So I just, in case people are confused, I do want to make sure we don't get too far off of why they're here. That, we're going to deal with the issue that's before us and not get too far off base. So with that in mind, if there's somebody here for the applicant.
Richard Wolf, attorney for Havanas. I will please with the zoning staff's recommendation of approval and its findings that the proposed conditional use is consistent with the township zoning resolution, is harmonious with the current uses in the area, and will not negatively impact the neighboring residential properties. As you know, this site has been a place of worship since 1974, even before many of the residents were built in the neighborhood, and the same use will continue in the new building. Not only will the conditional use not negatively impact the area, it will enhance it by replacing an old, deteriorating structure with a new attractive building that complies with all zoning requirements regarding setbacks, height, parking, and driveways. I want to emphasize that this is a house of worship, and there is no anticipated increase in the size of the congregation or traffic. The only additional offering of activity that's not already there is possibly a children's summer camp. There's already a winter camp offered to the kids. So the use of the building now is going to continue in the same way, the same magnitude. We're just going to have a nicer building that's more accommodating to do those things. Should also be noted that while the Davis County Plan Commission made no recommendation on the conditional use, the Plan Commission staff recommended approval and found the conditional use to be compatible with existing land use, not impacting the residential uses within the general vicinity, and consistent with the standards. Chabad House is also listened to the concerns of the neighbors most directly impacted by this project. And meetings and discussions have taken place, resulting in numerous accommodations by Chabad House. These include, but are not limited to, moving the location of the building farther to the south, moving the dumpster away from residences, increasing the height of the proposed fence, following dark sky lighting principles, adapting or adopting less intrusive signage, and shielding the HVAC units. The Chabad House will be a good neighbor and will continue its dialogue with surrounding property owners. They are also in receipt of a very favorable letter from the condominium units across King Road endorsing the project. In closing, Chabad House is confident that the new building will benefit both its congregation and the neighborhood.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wolf? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add one item that I did not have in my staff report. That is in regards to the fence on the north property line. The zoning resolution is a little gray as far as fence regulations. It specifies residential and non-residential. It does not say whether that's zone district or use. The residents apparently are interested in having an 8-foot fence, and Chabad House,
All right.
Chabad? Okay. Chabad House is apparently willing to erect an 8-foot fence. As long as it is not on the residential properties, the zoning department is fine with that, as Chabad House is residentially zoned but a non-residential use. And, 8-foot fence would certainly be, if this board approves of that as a condition to the conditional use, that would certainly be acceptable.
So that's something that the neighbors were asking for, and they've agreed to do that?
That is my understanding.
Okay.
To an 8-foot fence?
Right.
Is that, is,
I'm sorry?
Style fence.
I don't know if they
Mr.
got into the
if you want to
specifics.
address that, or if you want someone else.
Style of fence, or?
Yes. Well, I guess two questions. One is, if we can ask you to come back up, is it an 8-foot fence that you're agreeing to?
The 8-foot fence is what it's agreed to.
Okay, material?
In terms of material, I will have to defer to Kevin.
Okay, please state your name and sign in.
Kevin Lorenko. The fence is a wood fence, and it's similar to a dog ear, we just have the short.
So it's a privacy.
It's a privacy fence.
Okay. It'll be 8 foot. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to add? You're all set for now? Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak on behalf of this matter? Is there anybody else who wants to just speak on this matter? You're welcome to approach now.
Good afternoon, Richard Malone. I'm here on behalf of Ken Kerper, one of the adjacent property owners. Let me finish signing in here.
Sure.
As a preliminary matter, Mr. Hellberg, I have been advised, I don't know, that you may be a member of a Chabad House. I'm not sure if that's
No, I
true.
never have been, and I'm not.
We're here opposing the application for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, the application never should have been accepted at the township level because it was inherently missing mandatory pieces that would be part of the application. The application, the Sylvania Township zoning resolution provides no application will be considered unless the same is fully completed and accompanied by all required information listed on said approved forms. The site plan issues, it was deficient in the site plan. A lot of those issues have been resolved, and I'm not going to spend time on that. More importantly, however, 2501F of the zoning resolution requires a statement explaining how the proposed development, and I quote, meets the intent and general requirements of current township land use plan and zoning resolution. To our knowledge, we have never seen any statement that explains that required element of the application. Likely because the application and the proposed development does not and cannot meet the intent and general requirements as required. In fact, the Sylvania Township Land Use Plan contemplates that this property is going to be suburban residential, which defines only residential uses for the parcel. Recognizing that the existing use falls within the scope of a non-conforming use and can continue, but when the owners have elected to remove the existing building and substantially expand not only the size of the building, but the utilization of the property, they need to conform with the township zoning resolution. Secondly, subsection G requires, and I say requires, a narrative statement evaluating the effects of this on adjoining properties. Again, to our knowledge, no such narrative statement was included with the application when it was presented. This narrative statement needs to include a discussion of general compatibility with the adjacent other parcels within the area. It is safe to assume, I believe, that these were omitted because the development with the construction of the proposed building is not compatible with the residential neighborhood. The applicant's own model drawing and photo, and I have copies here. May I approach?
Sure.
This is a model drawing that was provided to the adjacent property owners just recently. And that is the view, as the applicant suggests, of the building from the rear yard of the adjacent property. One item that is out of proportion is those trees that are depicted in that picture are proposed to be 6 feet tall. That fence is 8 feet tall. So we're not going to see those trees for quite some time. And even if you could see the trees the way they're depicted, they do very little, if anything, to shield the view of what the candidate looks like a warehouse building rather than anything else. The applicant's attached to that is a photograph taken from my client's back porch, looking at the same space that is depicted in the model drawing. What you see there is a residential style, traditional shingle roof type of a structure that is consistent, at least, with the residential nature of the neighborhood. The new structure, which is going to be over 225% of the size of the existing structure, and is going to include a 28-foot tall wall that's depicted on the first page, facing these neighbors to the north, is an entirely different building and an entirely different style of building than what is in this residential neighborhood. The consideration of the impact on the neighboring properties and the massive expansion of the existing non-conforming use is more than 225% of the existing building. It is inconsistent with the architectural and residential nature of the buildings on all sides of it. The requirement that the applicant address these issues in the application was completely ignored. The result was that the Lucas County Plan Commission, despite the staff recommendation, declined to make a recommendation to this body. The applicant suggests that the property will be used as a place of worship. However, when you look at the application and the cover letter that accompanied it, it defines the use as a Jewish community center, the nerve center of all educational and outreach activities. The use that's going on that property right now is not objectionable to the neighbors. It's not an issue of who's using it or actually even what it's being used for. The objection is the intrusion into the neighborhood of this unsightly building that my client and other people in the neighborhood to the north are going to have looking at them along their entire backyard property lines. The characterization of the use as a place of worship appears to be somewhat of a shoehorn approach to fitting it into the conditional use category, which is the only area it can fit. When examined, it appears that the primary use is and has been as a community center. This building will have no fixed seating. It will have simply one large multi-purpose area with some office space and a kitchen facility inside the building. The style of this style of community center, while appropriate in a commercial zone district, is not appropriate in this residential zone district. The fact that the current use qualifies to remain there does not do away with this board's need to examine this in the context of the requirements of the zoning resolution. Clearly, the community center use could not be permitted as a conditional use. And the problem is that once you approve it and it begins to be used that way, when it changes hands in the future, there's no turning back on this process. Proposed design is not harmonious with the neighborhood. I believe that there are drawings that are part of the application that depict the building. I have just been advised, I don't know this for a fact, but that the rear building that will face my client's property and other people's property is going to be a painted cinder block wall on the low-rise part of the building, which is going to be 14 feet tall, well above the 8-foot privacy fence that is proposed to be placed on the Chabad property. Again, you can look at the photo and the model drawing, and you can see how that will be a view that is unavoidable from these folks' properties. The issue of parking on the property was discussed at some length, and I don't want to get into it a long time, but essentially they've designed their parking requirements based upon what they expect to use right now, as opposed to what it could be used for, which I think this board has to look at in determining whether or not the use is appropriate. In other words, Chabad may not own the property, and once approved, whether they think their congregation is going to grow or not, if it does, they're going to be able to do what they need. And they will not have adequate parking if that were to occur. This building accommodates 299 people under the fire code. The applicant has indicated that their use will be limited to 275, and that right now they only anticipate as many as 186. But that's not something that they can be held to once this project proceeds and goes forward. The effect of the construction of this building with this design in the middle of this residential neighborhood on market conditions in the area can't be predicted. But I can assure you it can't be positive. For all of these reasons, we believe that the application should be rejected, and it should have been rejected, as I indicated at the outset,
when it was first presented because of the glaring and unremedied omissions of material and information that the zoning resolution requires. Doesn't suggest, doesn't say it would be a good idea, requires that the applicant submit. When we brought these issues up in front of the Plan Commission, that is essentially the reason they pushed this thing away, because they recognized that these omissions existed. For all of these reasons, we would request that you reject the application.
Thank you. Daryl, can you confirm what under our code, what the height allowance is for a residential structure?
The height is 45 feet maximum.
Right, so if
Residential.
this wasn't approved, you can have a house that would be even substantially higher than this.
But its design would be consistent with residential construction. This is not a residential property. Doesn't look like a residential property, won't be used as a residential property. It looks, from my client's perspective, as depicted there, like a warehouse.
Okay.
Daryl, how many parking spaces are required per square foot?
For place of worship, it's not based on square foot, it is based on, it's 1 per 5 seats in sanctuary.
There are no
And
seats in
it's-
the sanctuary.
Could you clarify, Dick,
Five.
when you spoke about the land use plan and suburban residential zoning, you were making some comments about permitted uses. Do you feel that this is not a conditional use that would be approved or should
Well,
be
you have to
approved?
distinguish between the land use plan and the zoning resolution.
Let's start with
The
zoning resolution.
certainly recognizes a place of worship as a
Okay.
semi-public use that can be approved as a conditional use.
Right.
The land use plan, which isn't the final say on it, but the ordinance, your zoning resolution requires that the issue of conformity to the land use plan needs to be addressed and discussed in the application. That is totally absent from this application.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. I know you're just representing that one client. When did he build his house? What year was that house built?
1990.
Okay, so that property was there,
The property was there,
existing, that
the
building? was
existing building was there.
Right. So,
He didn't, my client did not build the home. He purchased the home already built, but in any event, you're right. The building that houses the House of Chabad existed since 1974.
correct.
And it was, as I understand from looking at the background of the property, was with a different denomination of place of worship, but, and if the plan was to continue to use the House of Chabad and do something else that required your approval, but to use that structure or that type of structure with that kind of a profile from the property, we probably wouldn't be here today. The issue here is what is being proposed is not harmonious with the existing neighborhood. It's not being built with, you look at that picture of the House of Chabad from my client's backyard. It could very well be somebody's home that's on the other side of that fence from what you're looking at from there. That won't be true when the walls go up, the concrete wall, the cinder block wall, the air conditioning unit on the roof, on the side looking at my client's property.
Have you not come across other houses of worship that look like that?
I have not.
You've not?
Not in a residential zone. I just noticed there's two of them on Holland Sylvania Road to the north of Central Avenue. And they're both residential style structures, and they're both religious places of worship. And if you drove by, you would say, well, I see it's got a church signage out front, but the building itself is consistent with the residences that are around it. This isn't that type of a building.
Okay, on this picture, I'm looking from this person's backyard.
Correct.
How high is that fence right now?
The fence that is existing, you're looking at the photograph?
That's
Yeah, the
right.
photograph depicts a 6-foot fence.
The picture is a 6-foot fence.
The photograph is a 6-foot fence. The model drawing that is there would presumably depict an 8-foot fence.
Okay, so if that fence right now, from what I'm sitting there looking, setting down, and if that fence was 8 feet tall, with them trees that are there, you wouldn't hardly ever see that building.
Well, I don't agree with that, because I think that it's kind of thin, and you gotta remember that around here, for 6 months out of the year, there's no foliage on those trees.
Well, not.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine.
Is there any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Halbert, will I have a chance to respond?
Yeah, oh, yes, yes. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Sure. Could I ask you to please come up to the podium? Oh, you can go ahead, yeah, you're good. Just state your name and sign in, please.
My name is Chet Trail. I live at 2636 King Road. I'm about
Do you have the aerial? I guess I
about
wanted
100
to...
yards,
Oh, okay. I just wanted to see where you are.
depending upon which way, if you're coming from Bancroft, I'm 100 yards
Are you in the corner, Chad?
north. Right down the,
This your house right here?
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wilmington, I sit right on the corner.
Right.
And to your point, sir, you were talking about when was a house built there. I've been out there since 1964. And really, for the sake of time, whoever put this on my door and listened to things as to why we ought to show up today and voice our concerns, this spells it out in its entirety. That building does not and is not consistent with why I moved out there, remodeled my house, that I don't want a warehouse 100 yards from my house. Across the street, you allow homes to go in. That was all well and good. But this gentleman made my point. Everything that he said, I disagree with, except about the legal part. So I hope that you all don't have to try to get out of your driveway like we do now at 5 and 6 o'clock in the evening. All of this, what's going across the street, and with this, is going to increase traffic. When I moved out there was 8 homes. And every time a car came down King Road, it would get our attention. Now it's almost like a racetrack, and this is going to do nothing but add to it. So I hope that you consider us as residential neighborhood where I am not against progress, but I am against a warehouse going up on King Road 100 feet from me, 100 yards from me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Somebody else?
Good evening.
I'm Mark Rose. I'm an attorney at Marshall Malhorn, and I'm representing some of the two homeowners that live on the north property line of this proposed project. Joe and Jennifer Dawson at 7433 Finchwood, and Jeff and Beth Wilson at 7453 Finchwood. I know one, at least Jennifer, will provide some testimony. Yeah. She is, Mr. Malone's client is the middle house.
Oh, I see.
Okay, right there. That's Mr. Malone's client. That's Ken, and I apologize for his wife's. Erica Kerper. And then on King Road is Beth and Jeff, or Jeff and Beth and Jeff Wilson. And Joe and Jennifer Dawson are over there. So you got everybody that borders on this property, and of course, Mr. Trail down the street. We have worked hard, the Wilsons and the Dawsons, with Chabad to try to get this project to be as harmonious as possible. And our most recent meeting was Sunday. We expressed to them, and I think they expressed to us, that this is how these things need to work, people working together to get this project approved and get this project so that it best fits within the neighborhood. And we're close. As I expressed to counsel for Chabad, we have a couple of issues that we need to address, and we're not there yet. This is not our doing, the neighbors, to try to have this track meet end tonight. We think this is a project that's going to be here long after your terms are up, and long after these residents live in these houses. This project will be there, and maybe even after Chabad leaves and someday moves on to another place. This has turned over several times since it was built in 1974. There's no reason to believe that it won't someday pass on to another congregation or another use in the future. So when we look at these things, we have to look at them in that context. And when I talk tonight, it's in the context of we have worked in good faith to work a resolution with Chabad. And I want to read what that, into the record, what that is, and ultimately when we reach agreement, and we think we will, we're not there yet, but we think we will, we're going to document it so that it's recorded, it runs with the land, and that'll be between us, the homeowners, and Chabad for our own policing, in addition to whatever zoning needs to go on. So I'll deal with that in a minute.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Is Mr. Malone, is your client part of those discussions?
No, my client is a little uniquely positioned because his lot is 100 yards wide, or 100 feet wide, and 90 feet of this building abuts his property. Almost the full expanse of the building.
He's in the middle. Okay. I just was wondering if this was a joint effort. Sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
He's not part of it.
Okay.
We aren't necessarily opposed to Mr. Malone. We're not necessarily opposed to this.
Right.
We have our own agreement.
Gotcha.
We think, like I said, we're close. But it's important where we're not close, because we need to reach agreement on that before we can give full, I don't want to say support, but certainly we can withhold any objection to the project. But before we get there, I want to review a couple things. And Mr. Malone touched on a lot of things, but I want to give some focus to a couple of things. First of all, on a conditional use permit. We heard the zoning inspector, and we also heard the plan commissioner or the staff report deal with or say that this use is compatible and harmonious with the overall neighborhood. Well, that's true if the use is only religious assembly and the other uses that go with it, whether that's daycare, or they have some educational outreach, some other social things that go on. But the use of the zoning code is talking about for conditional use is more than just the daily activities. It's the physical structure of the building. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to submit, as what's called for under Article 25, a site plan. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to talk about noise and odors and the look and feel of the building. You would just say, what are they using it for? If they're using it for this, that use is compatible. There's no argument. And we heard even Mr. Malone say, there's no argument that the use that they're putting it to, or that will put it to, is not compatible. The use is fine. Mr. Trail has some issues, it sounds like, with the overall traffic, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But as far as the overall use goes, the use is fine if we only confine it to the activities. But they didn't submit, I don't know how the zoning inspector could say at the outset, when he got this back in August or July, when it was filed, I agree with it, this meets the conditional use. He didn't have any plans. He didn't have your picture that you looked at, that we just submitted. Frankly, I didn't have them until last night at 8:15, when I got it by email. And then I learned today, minutes before the hearing, that the wall that would make one of our presidential candidates proud is a cinder block, okay? Painted cinder block. That's not compatible with a residential neighborhood. Nobody can say that that's compatible. So what do we have to do to get this to be compatible? Well, the conditional use says that we have to provide controls and regulations. That's what it says, that's your words in your zoning code for this. So our agreement in the context is to deal with those controls and regulations. And that's what we're trying to do. We're also trying to take the burden off the township to say, I'm going to police those on a daily basis. Because this change, this building, is an absolute wholesale change to what we've had there for the last 25 years. And the one member asked about the timing of everything. Clearly, again, whoever moved into this home, whether it was 1990 or 1980, they were aware of this use. That's the way it goes. We're not taking issue with use. But they weren't aware that they were going to have a structure that's 2¼ times the size of this, and that's going to be a cinder block wall facing the picture that we have. So, we have to have regulations, and that's what we're required to have. The parking, and I want to just deal with that, because somebody asked how many parking spots are available. And then I'm going to move on to our agreement. What's interesting is, as Mr. Malone said, there's no chairs. They move as portable chairs. Okay? And somebody said, there's a question, what is the parking required for this use that Mr. Malone recites, which I don't have any issue with, nobody's testifying contrary to that, permits 275, maybe 299. There's no dispute that at least 275 is the permitted number of occupants under fire, under building code, but there's no dispute on that. And so what they've said is, what Kavada said is, yeah, but we're only going to have 186 people, and you do one for every 5, and so you do some math, and it's about 38 people. Well, the zoning code deals with parking requirements. And this goes also to Mr. Malone's argument. It says, here's how you determine parking spaces. You don't just look at one use, okay? Because if it's multiple uses, it says, whenever there is more than one type, I'm looking at 2910. I'll do it. Yes. Okay. Whenever there is more than one type of use on a parcel area allocated for each specific use must be identified. I would ask the zoning inspector, has each specific use been identified on the site plan? Each specific use? The answer is no, it hasn't. There's nothing that shows each specific use. Each separate or distinct use on the site shall meet its own specific parking. There's no discussion of that. There's no narrative of that parking, right? So we're not even there yet. Okay? So that's the issue on the parking. So where are we at? We want this to go through. We're prepared for this to go forward. Okay? And here's our agreement. And then I'll tell you, because we're stuck at really one important item. One, the building location. And I will read this. I have a copy that I brought, I hope, for you guys. I have 3. I'm sorry. And here's what we're going to do with this. If this is approved, and if it's approved, what I've agreed with Kavad is I'll prepare a declaration. I know some of you have seen that in the real estate business before. We'll get it notarized, we'll record it, we'll go with an updated site plan that reflects this, and then we're going to record it, and then we're off to the races. Okay? The building location will be located, and I'm reading this for the record. The building location will be 30 feet south from the north property line. 2 to 3 feet south of the north property line is the tallest portion of the building, 28 feet. That means it's not going to go to 45 feet. They've agreed to limit it to 28 feet. Flat roof line section starting 52 feet south of the north property line. The building will extend west no closer to King than 50 feet from its current location. The lighting. Lighting is important to us because, again, you look out, and this is supposed to be harmonious. And we're trying to make it harmonious. Kavad is to follow what is known as the International Dark Sky Association, which is Attorney at IDA Dark Sky. Believe it or not, there is an association that does that. Principles for lighting including fully shielded light fixtures with coverings to direct light downward on all light fixtures, no upward lighting, pole lights not to exceed 8 foot high, except for safety lighting, which they have to have, and they have now, safety lighting on the building. Timers will be turned on, will be regulated by, for interior and exterior lights, so that the lights go off automatically and turn on no earlier than 7 a.m. and are turned off no later than a half hour after they close, or if they close at 6, then they go off no later than 9 p.m. The building exterior will not be lit except at the entrance. A dumpster, as Mr. Wolf said, counsel for the Cloud House, again, these will all give and take. The dumpster, they're going to move it close to the kitchen, which we think works well for everybody. It will be properly screened. Essentially, it's near the northeast corner, as reflected in the revised plan. It will be fenced in and gated to be concealed from view. Parking, paved area to the north of the North Drive, which now exists, will be eliminated. There will be a revised plan again to reflect all of this. The North Drive will stay the same width, and it will be terminated basically a few feet to the east of the front of the building. And again, all of this is on the revised site plan that we agreed to with Hawaii. The 2 parking spaces on the north side will be reoriented so that they are basically perpendicular, that they're not parallel parking. Again, this is on the north driveway. The fence, and there's no discussion here about the fence. Today, there's an 8-foot fence that is on the 7433 Finchwood property. We have that. So there's an 8-foot fence there. Chabad has agreed to extend that 8-foot fence along the property line. So we have to do 2 things to accommodate that. We, the neighbors, okay, including Mr. Malone's client who's going to participate. He hasn't yet, but if he does, we're going to have to give an easement to Chabad to put a fence on residential property. That has to be done. We're willing to do that. I'm going to put that as part of the overall declaration, and they're going to maintain the fence so that we deal with any legal issues.
So the fencing we're talking about, just again,
Sure.
so there's no duplication. You're going to have the fence that whatever's agreed upon will be on the residence property.
Just like it is now.
It is.
We don't want 2 fences.
Right.
Because then you'd have trouble in between.
Right. Okay.
It just doesn't make any sense. Plus, you have to eliminate some of the foliage, which would, some of the vegetation.
Right.
Some of the vegetation, which would cost more. And that doesn't make any sense to rip things up. Essentially, it's 2 feet at most to move the fence. So we don't want to do that. We're trying to work together to get that done. We're going to have an 8-foot fence going all the way across. 8-foot fences are permitted adjacent to residential properties. The key is they're not permitted by right on residential properties unless we get a variance. So part of the application says they got to get a variance for an 8-foot fence. So we're asking tonight, as part of the conditional use, that you approve, if you approve the conditional use, that it include a variance to permit this 8-foot fence. Again, we talked about how the fence is going to be maintained. Landscaping irrigation, and this is a key point. And we've accepted, again, a lot of give and take here, okay, from both sides. They feel like there may be a couple of trees that aren't necessary. We, of course, would love, Sherwood Forest to be put here, okay? So we're trying to work together to get this done. If you can read it yourself, but essentially we're going to have a row of, we're going to put some arborvitaes in along the Wilson's lot, which is 7453 Finchwood, to complete the arborvitae kind of series of trees that goes towards King Road. And then behind those trees, so this would be south of the arborvitaes, there'd be a row of Colorado spruces all the way down the property line. They won't be as big as the fence to begin with, we understand that. But they're going to have to irrigate this. I've agreed with Cloud, we're not going to specify how the spray has to work on the irrigation. They've agreed to irrigate. Okay. Why do we do that? We understand they could have a bucket brigade every other Wednesday, and they could water the trees. Probably not easy to enforce. We think that they're more likely to keep it irrigated if we put in irrigation. And the city of Toledo has the same situation. They require irrigation unless you get a variance, and I know your code doesn't provide that, but they've agreed to that, we appreciate that, and we think that's going to help them and us with the overall irrigation. We would like more trees, we hope to work with them to get more trees, but at this stage, this is what we would agree to. And again, I'm not going to read, but we have it for the record, what's going in, so I'm kind of giving you a highlight.
Darrell, was this submitted with the site plan? Is this
So
the first time
those-
you've seen this, or?
I saw it about a week ago. Lucas County Plan Commission staff copied me on it.
And this is a new iteration of that, because we've been negotiating, as I said, this was not submitted with the site plan at all. This came
No,
about.
no, it's not with the site.
Because we've had a lot of meetings, a lot of people working hard to get something done. Okay. All right, the sign. The sign is an issue, not only for us, but it's going to be an issue for Mr. Trail and all the other neighbors. We initially didn't want to have a digital sign. Okay, digital signs for my house. I drive down the street at night, there were signs for digital signs. But for reasons that, technology wants to have a digital sign, it makes it easier to change. We've agreed that, okay, you can have a digital sign, but let's turn it off. We talked about it at 9 o'clock at night. I think it turns on at 7 in the morning. But please, no changing. We don't want photographs. You see these new digital signs. We want it to be basically a static image, static letters, not image, static letters for the day, a couple days, and then they change it again. So it's not going to be a scrolling, changing, flashing. We probably want to make sure that it doesn't have a completely white background and then have dark letters. Some of you have seen that before. They're going to cooperate. We'll work on that. But that's the sign plan.
It's a low profile.
It can't be higher than 5 feet. Okay. And then this will be a monument sign. And then there'll be a frame on it, probably a backlit on the top of it. It'll say, identify the occupant, and that can stay on consistent with whatever the code is. But that won't be digital. That will be the standard lighting. Again, we leave that to you. We're asking you for some leadership on this, but at this stage, we've agreed to the digital sign. Sanitary sewer. There was a sewer that they need to bring. They need to run a sanitary sewer from the King Road to theirs. They had shown initially on their site plan that it was going to go in a certain area that would have not allowed us to put the trees in, or down to put the trees in where they agreed to. Essentially, all that is they're going to move the whole sanitary sewer more to the north. There's no issue there. We're fine with that. That's obviously underground. We'll never see it. Here's where we're at on the HVAC. And this is important to us. And it really goes to the issue, really, of the noise and look and feel. We had two issues with the HVAC. One, the look. By putting large units on the roof, we don't know, we looked, there are no houses, residential structures up and around the neighborhoods that have rooftop units, okay? Not large rooftop units, some have windows. So we said, can you please lock it? And they did. They've now, if you look at it, the problem is that's raised the profile of the, I'll call it the presidential wall that goes up, okay, which is cinder block, okay. That's created an issue for us. We haven't had a chance to digest it yet. We want to work with them. We want to get this right. We think the visibility is going to be fine. We think we're going to work through that.
But it's ground level.
No, it's not ground
It's
level.
not ground, you're
No.
saying above
Yeah, they didn't want to
because of the
ground level.
noise.
Again, guys, this is the give and take. We
Right.
wanted ground, they said no, we're trying to work with them. They wanted now what we're saying is, let's make sure that we soundproof it so that the noise doesn't come over the wall and make it so loud. They have 6 units out there. I don't know, did you see the picture of the number of units? I brought-
Picture the units?
Yeah, of how many units they're going to have. First you did. Here's these are all the units. These are the homes.
Our rooftop.
So again, you're trying to be harmonious with with the neighborhood. You're trying to be harmonious with the neighborhood. Having 6 rooftop units, 60 feet from your house, 80 feet from your house, that's not consistent with typical residential. Because remember what we're doing here, and I said the same thing at the if this is approved without all of our conditions that we have now, without an agreement like we have now, everyone else in the township is entitled to the same. You can't discriminate. So the next party that comes that wants to put something next to it, they're going to inch a little closer, a little bit. You've lost all control. That's why we're trying to have these controls as part of this. We haven't agreed yet to this HVAC. We'll figure it out. These guys are big guys. We'll figure this out. But we haven't yet. We're not there. I can't stand here and I'll say we have a final agreement. My clients won't let me say that because we don't have a final agreement and they know that. So I don't know what to do. Okay, I guess one thing we could do is defer this for, I don't know when we meet again, and then we can try to reach agreement on this. That's assuming you really need to go forward on this at all. I don't know.
Are any of these things, because that's what I'm wondering about, you're saying there's a number of things that are agreed upon.
All of them.
Okay, so are there anything that you are planning on recording to run with the land? Because
all of them.
Okay.
All this is going into declaration.
Okay. So that's how, all right. So what even, let's say this body did vote today, what's still not settled, you have peace of mind that it will be part of a declaration.
We're going to get this done.
I just want to at least
I'm not
understand.
worried. I'm more concerned that we just got this last night
Right.
on the HVAC. We haven't had a chance to investigate. In fairness to my clients, they deserve a chance to really to see this through, to understand what's going on. We just learned about the cinder block wall today. Okay, that, and again, I don't know your own zoning code. I know cities literally never allow an uninterrupted, without different levels and things like that. Well, for this reason, I mean, it's not attractive. You look at it, and as I said to Ahmad on Sunday, they go home at night. They're done. Okay? My people are here. They stay. They live there. They don't get to go home. They're at their home. So they're living with this. This is very important to them. They want to get it right. Okay? And we're committed to working with them to get it right. This takes give and take. We're almost there. I wish I could say that. I have a lot of people. I respect them all, and it's hard to do that. But we've got to get this right. And it's not right yet. If it's right at all, that's up to you again.
I have a question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So point of clarity, you said that this is agreed upon, but.
No, not the HVAC.
Okay, so everything.
We put it ground level,
HVAC.
and they did not agree to it. I don't want to put words in their mouth. I don't think they agreed to it.
All right. So everything else is agreed upon except for the HVAC.
Yeah.
One thing that Mark has pointed out that I guess I wanted a bit of clarification on the use and the parking, at least trying to interpret that from the Plan Commission and the report, isn't that based on the highest intensity use for the property, or is it strictly based on, worship services and seats, as Mr. Malone has pointed out, that are not permanent? So I'm trying to understand, as opposed to going through and saying, well, then there's this use and this is, have we looked at, if it's used, we know one of the uses is a community center, is it that parking ratio based on the highest intensity of potential parking?
The community center parking ratio is 1 per 250 square feet. So that would come out to 39 required spaces, and they're at 53 provided spaces.
Can I? I'm not. Okay. But if you got, you know where I'm going with this. You got 9,700 square feet.
Right.
You divide by 250. Math majors, anybody? Coach Trout, anything on that? 38 is 250, goes into 9,700.
Yeah, because 10,000.
Okay, so that's, I just want to make sure that's.
No, right, all right.
One every 250 for a community center?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about a banquet hall? How would that come out?
But I'm not sure.
Well,
Yeah,
they're
that
going
would
to
be,
have social events, they're going to have all kinds of.
Yeah, but it's not a banquet hall for hire. Yeah, it's not a banquet hall for
right,
hire.
that's a commercial use.
Yeah, and that's a commercial use. But I'm just, I want to at least see if this is.
Auditorium, banquet hall, conference center, those, again, the goal is to try to have enough parking spots.
Right,
We
right, no,
understand. That's going to be an issue for you guys
Right.
when, if the parking lot goes up.
Right, and that's a legitimate concern for neighbors not to be, having to ward off cars entering the street and parking on the residential streets, that's a legitimate concern. That's why I'm trying to get a sense of what they're going to have for the highest potential use there, which would be gathering. So right now, the 1 to 250 for a community center.
Right. Auditorium, banquet hall, bingo hall is 1 per 75 square feet. That's under the commercial uses category.
All right, so what does that put us at?
So just to be clear, there is no,
No,
what other use, if it wasn't commercial use, what other use would this be? Because residential doesn't provide for anything.
right.
Institutional parking. Church, place of worship, community center, those all fall under institutional parking. Institutional use.
Okay.
What was submitted with the application then? Did these site plans?
I've not seen those.
So everything that we have is what was submitted?
Everything that I've sent to you, emailed you, is what was either submitted with the application or since the application.
Exactly how many square feet again?
Yeah, I'm going to make a suggestion. It seems like Mr. Rose and his clients and Chabad House are continuing their negotiations, and they're close, and I appreciate that. I think Mr. Malone brought up some points that are valid about the application and some things that should be finalized on that. I'm going to make a motion to defer this matter.
And that's fine, and I think I just had a couple questions if we're considering that before the motion. Could I ask Mr. Malone, if I could ask you, obviously you're operating independent, but obviously your client's impacted significantly because he's right there. And I don't know any history. Is this something, I understand you've talked about whether it warrants it being a house of worship. Setting that aside, is this something, are you open to having discussions on the aesthetics and the design and all of that? I mean, that's really my question.
Our concern is that it is a wholesale change, and my client, of all the adjacent property owners, is the most heavily impacted. All 6 of those air conditioning units align with his backyard. All 6 of them. That wall is 90 feet long. It aligns with his backyard. There's some intrusion into the Wilson's yard as well, but he is by far the most heavily impacted looking at this wall. He doesn't want that wall. There were discussions about things that could have been done that might have allayed his objections to this. They were rejected by Chabad a long time ago before I got involved. I respect what Mark is trying to do, and what his clients is trying to do is to avoid the horrible consequences in the event this project does go forward. My client's objective is to prevent the building that is being proposed from going forward. It is our position that this application is fatally deficient and has to be judged by what was submitted by Chabad when the application was filed in June of 2016. It is missing essential, mandatory elements of the application. And I'm not suggesting that even if they had those pieces in the application at that time, that I'd have a different position here, but at least I wouldn't be able to argue that there's a jurisdictional deficiency in this board even considering the application. And that's where I think we sit right now. If this board wants to defer it, that's for the board to decide. If the board is going to go forward, our position is that this board should reject the application.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to still ask the question. Now you're involved on behalf of your client. My question is there, right, if we defer this and come back, you've made it very clear what your position would be again. Is there, between now and then, is your door open to at least having discussions? So under certain conditions, you might be able to, it might be palatable to your client for what would be there.
I haven't had that conversation with my client. We have been kept apprised of the discussions that are going on, and I understand the approach that's being taken with respect to those discussions. And certainly, if this project is approved or is allowed to proceed, and if all of the things that Mark and his clients have negotiated, will my client be to some degree benefited by that? He will be, but not from the point of view, not to the degree that he feels is appropriate, given, like I say, that that's not our model drawing, that's their model drawing of what we're going to look at. And that doesn't even tell us it's a cinder block wall. And now we know it's a cinder block wall that's closer than the building that is there right now to our backyard.
So I'll ask you, would you be willing to participate in something like that?
As I said, when I say participate, I've been kept apprised, but for a variety of reasons, I've taken one approach.
Right.
And Mark has taken another approach, and we're certainly apprised of what's going on. And, I never say never.
Okay, yeah, I respect that you may be back here next month or whenever if it's deferred with the exact, I do understand it, and I'm not.
Never say never.
So what I'm saying is, would you be willing to make the effort to maybe between now and then, you're open that can be maybe looked at?
There has been an ongoing dialogue that we've been tangentially involved in.
All right.
Okay?
I appreciate
I think
it.
that was a yes or no question. Did you give me a yes or no?
We'll listen.
Did you give me a yes
No,
or
that's-
no
that's-
that
I
you will
think-
talk?
Sure, when I listen, I talk. I'm invariably
No,
going to talk when I
it's a
listen.
yes or no.
No,
Yes, we will listen and we will talk. We won't necessarily tell you we will agree.
No, right.
Maybe address,
Oh, of course, but I asked him to come up, I just wanted to, thank you. All right, Mr. Wolf and anybody else?
My name is Kevin Romanco. I was the one that originally filled out the application and submitted it to Darrell. And on the application, we used the word community center, a place of worship and a community center.
Guys,
Where that term came from is from the Kabod's website, where it describes what Kabod House is. And it's not the same, it's not using the term in the same way as what we as builders would use it, or as a use. It's more of a term that's used to describe of bringing the Jewish community into a location where they can do the things that they do. It's not what we would quote call a community center. It's, if you can understand what I'm saying, it's more like a mecca, a place of gathering for this particular faith. So I just wanted to clear that up because that's a term that I put on there, and that's not what the use is. It was originally zoned as a place of worship, and at some point the zoning code changed and it was zoned residential and it fell into conditional use. And so when we look at the code, it says on a conditional use we can't tear down, we can't rebuild, we can't do anything unless we come before. And that's the reason that we're here. Impact studies and things like that, everyone else that has looked at it, we've added 10 parking spots. The impact of adding 10 parking spots is pretty insignificant to a lot of the other activity that's going on in the area. So the impact on increased traffic and stuff like that's going to be maybe at the max 10 more cars on a Saturday morning. You know, it's not, if you understand what's going on in the Kabod house, it's a place of worship. It's not something that we've got, 30 cars coming and going every day. That's not the way it is. They have an office staff that's there during the week.
They have a wedding, they have a funeral, they have some teaching and some worship. And if you're familiar with any other church, you know, it's very similar in nature. It's just Jewish. I want to make a point about the rendering. The rendering was not generated to depict what the building is going to look like. Otherwise, we would have had trees in there, we would have maybe some shadowing and did something that was more for presentation purposes. The purpose of that rendering was just to show that when you look at it, you can't see the rooftop units. It's not, you know, to show what the colors of the building is, the stripe that's running down it is just, you know, that's not what it's going to look like. We don't know what it's going to look like yet. And they use the term as cinder block, and a couple of you guys are, I know, are involved in construction. We don't really use cinder block anymore, and especially painted cinder block. We're using a nice split face, colored split face block, which gives it a much softer texture than what the old cinder block would have done. And I think at some point we could probably come up with some better renderings that sort of highlight maybe the beauty of this and put it in the landscaping that's actually going to be there. The landscaping that's shown on there just depicts the height of a tree. It's not depicting the density of what's actually going on along that fence. And so I just wanted to clarify a couple of those points. Thank you very much.
You know, one suggestion I would have is if you know, if this gets revisited here, I think, yeah, a lot more detail would be, you know, would also be beneficial that this board sees instead of, if, you know, certainly looking at a rendering like that, it's not jumping to a conclusion of what they think they're seeing, because that's somewhat what it looks like. So I think, and even now we're talking about there's a unique definition of community center, I think, which goes to the point of specifying some of that on an application. I think the more, because you're in an area you're in, the more detail the better. So everybody, you know, I think we're trying to, in my opinion, we want to take on an element of surprise. And I think in the world we live in, people are a bit leery of promising one thing and getting something different. So I think it's Bod's House intent to be transparent, and I think you need to make yourself as transparent as possible, in my opinion. So I think it'll help all the way around.
Just want to address a few things. First of all, Mr. Malone, as he said, has been kept apprised. Mr. Kerber has been part of meetings with the group that is also including Mr. Rose's clients. So attempts have been made to keep him in order. Just to focus on some things that Mr. Malone referred to, for what it's worth, houses of worship frequently don't look like the residences around them, even if they're in a residential neighborhood. I would say that none of the synagogues in this area look like a house. Several churches in this area do not look like a house, and many of them are in residential neighborhoods. Getting to the technicalities, Mr. Malone talks about the application. I was not part of that process, but I believe the statement explaining compliance with zoning is moot, and that obviously the staff of the Plan Commission and the zoning department here have determined that for what was submitted, the application does comply with the zoning resolution. Regarding a statement describing compatibility with the neighborhood, it's my understanding that Mr. Romanco did file a letter discussing that, the compatibility with the neighborhood. Regarding the expansion of the size and the significance of that, it says in the zoning report that the building density is less for the Chabad House property than the residences surrounding it. So it's not that it's occupying this huge amount relative to the lot. It's actually less in building density than the residences. Mr. Malone said that he thinks the use is acceptable now as it is. For some reason, using what one of the presidential candidates does, he's insinuating those numbers could change knowing what the numbers are. The fact is that there's a limited Jewish community in this, a Jewish population in this community, and it's not getting any bigger, and the people who are committed to their synagogues are committed to their synagogues. So there should be no significant increase. I'm informed by the rabbi that there's almost never more than 100 people in that building for any function, perhaps the exception of one day a year when it might be 150, but 100 is even a large amount. I understand Mr. Trail's concerns being a neighbor close by, but because of what I just said, there aren't going to be a significant number of more people coming to the Chabad House. And the county engineer determined, because of the nature of what was being done, there was no need for a traffic study, there was no concern there. And we also resent a bit, I want to put this on the record, that a flyer was circulated, which I think brought Mr. Trail here, that called it a commercial building. This is not a commercial building, it's a house of worship consistent with the zoning resolution. So those are the points I want to make.
Thank you.
I would also say that we have no issue deferring this matter. We would like to work closely with the neighbors to make them feel better about it.
Yo,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second Mr. Slaughter's motion, if it still stands. But, I mean, right now, from the very beginning, I feel like stuff is just coming in, this feels a little rushed. I mean, half the stuff wasn't submitted with the, most of the stuff I saw just tonight for the first time. And probably the agreement is the biggest thing. It's not even agreed upon. So if we're going to make a conditional use along those parameters, I would think that we should at least have an agreement.
Yeah, I guess with the only, and yeah, we'll have a motion made. There is, folks have taken the time to come here today, and I would like to see before we would make a motion, if there's anybody, especially on the chance it is deferred, if there's anybody that has something unique that they want said, that could be taken into consideration while if it is deferred. I don't want to deny somebody a chance to speak here. And so, I'm putting that out. If there's anybody else that does want to speak that's here today, that has something to offer unique to what's been, maybe shed a light on a point that has not been said, please come up. And if not, you don't have to, but I want to make sure that if somebody does want to say something of that opportunity before we go on to the next action. There being none. I made that. Is there somebody? Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah, I still have to ask you to come up to be on the record.
I apologize for being late. I got rear-ended on the way over here.
No problem. Sorry to hear that. I'm going on at the Chabad House. Oh, so you weren't here earlier? Yeah, we're going to need to swear you in real quick. Just raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The reason I wanted to come.
And your name, sir?
Hal Gardner.
Okay.
I live on Britannia Court.
Okay.
That's that circle you can see in the lower right there.
Yep. Yeah.
Photograph.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about this until I got this. I think you referred to this flyer. It was dropped in my mailbox.
You didn't get a notice? You should have been
Same
covered.
here, and on Britannia Court also. Didn't know anything about it until we got that flyer yesterday, or 2 days ago. And I'm right against that fence, which is a 3-foot or 4-foot fence.
Yeah, hang on a second. Hang on. We got to do one at a time. And no, we'll welcome you, but so we'll certainly look into that. But under the code, anybody within a certain distance is supposed to have been provided notice. So, and I think you would qualify under that. But we'll check and see. But go ahead, sir.
Okay, so my question is, and I don't understand the process, but I've lived on the Britannia Court Circle now for 12 years. And I know myself and my neighbors have invested heavily in maintaining their properties and the property values, and also making sure that we have a safe, welcoming community for all the families that live there. At one time, there were 22 children on a cul-de-sac. Now I think it's substantially less. I have no idea what this expansion would do to property values. I appreciate the idea that it's a house of worship, and that certainly there's other communities within Sylvania that have a Methodist church or a Catholic church, close by residential areas. What I saw in this drawing looked to me like a commercial warehouse type structure, and I just didn't know if anyone had addressed the owners of the properties that are adjoining this area to address housing values, and what this kind of more commercial, if that's not the appropriate word, I apologize, it's the word I have, would do to our homes. So, 12 years of investment of upkeep and maintenance. You want to make sure it's on point, you get a return on that investment as much as you can in today's economy, and not have it be detracted by something that a potential buyer would say, well, it's nothing against the use of the property, but the appearance and the way it maybe detracts from the value of our homes.
All right, that's a legitimate point.
And if there's other meetings like this, I'd love to know that. But again, I was not aware of them.
All right, make sure of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
appreciate
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
please,
what's your name?
please sign in. Okay, I don't know if you did want to comment, you can,
Well, I just agree, I was not aware of any of it,
okay,
and we live right there.
all right. Well,
And
that's
there's a
something,
split rail fence, and they're saying they're two people, they're agreeing with the Chabad house, but they didn't talk to us, so is this fence gonna come around our property too, if it's agreed upon?
okay, well, that,
Talk to all the houses, but.
is there something else you wanted to say, or you just, are you checking that? Okay. All right,
I couldn't catch his name, but I do have the list of all the property owners that were within the 200,
right.
whatever we were required. What was your name again, sir?
Gardner.
Pardon?
Gardner.
Gardner?
What's the address?
Do you want to? All right, while you're working on that, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to go back momentarily. We'll be back out, and we'll let you know what we're going to do. Okay?
How are you? I'm good. How's your daughter? She graduated probably last year, right?
50 changed her,
Oh, really?
just a slight change, but they have an opportunity to make it for the next 3 years, so.
Sure. Skylar, my daughter, she's fifth year too,
Where?
in Indiana.
Oh my, your guys will be at Sarah's house, Indiana.
Yes.
Well, I'll let her know.
Good. All right, so.
How's she doing?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Same with Sarah. It's always a little bitter, but it is sweet.
Are you ready, still ready to play?
No, one is retired, I do some work for the,
Okay.
Tall property. Website. Okay, that's all.
I'm not agreeing to it, I don't know anything about it. Right there, where's the arrow? There's no trail, there's you spent a lot of money on that. 26. So we are touching their property. Yeah, right there where the pools for the arrows. Yeah. That's us. So it's like a 4-foot split rail fence with the trees, the leaves come down. You see it here every.
I will. I'm still around. Isn't that something? I do. Right. Doing well?
To notify them.
Oh, yeah. Mark, there, my first coaching job, these guys are fresh.
We were very good at, he was, he got allowance. Somebody else did. You know what I mean? This is not just a locker room. Some of those guys are some Matt Walt Simon, River Walt. Oh, really? For Hillary?
Sarah walked in up and he said, yeah.
You changed it.
Yeah, I'm pleased. Yeah, I was going to card, that would be great.
But really, Tuesday or whatever, that's what I was saying. That's what she said.
Yeah, that's what.
So, I mean, like, you took me through this all before. Just sad. Yeah. Right next to the. St. James sign. Yeah. We did put plants and new trees.
But those, and I, okay. Those trees,
They moved something, they still are missing.
Right.
Yeah.
Very camouflage. I was gonna make it about the team, I didn't even know.
Well, he said about the growth. So, yeah.
Yeah, so.
When land is developed across the street, he said, we're gonna have some more upset. He was saying that really not our thing to do because we're something that.
It's not the most, it's a brand new
No, see, all right. No. It's been. Yeah. Yeah, she said. Because the real estate. Yeah. Well, it's gotta come up now. It's been so. Well, you know, it's almost.
what to do, like. You can't, really, you can't tell a picture of anything how it's gonna work. It's like the building. 24th. So, like, most people work. And it's like, you're sending out the notice and.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just telling the folks.
Yeah, well, we're now.
So that's.
So then when you got
There's a reason to use that. It's not good. All right, okay. Good to see you. Give me your foot.
That's what we're talking about.
Right, if you guys, want to come to our I just want to but yeah, I just, you would be more involved. Sometimes,
That's what I was just repeating back up.
He's in the business.
oh, right. We don't want some memories, which I think is
Isn't that something about sport?
Oh, yes.
Isn't that something about sport?
Yeah.
I mean, just something after kitchen TV.
Okay, we're back in session. I think there was a motion put out before we went into session, and I guess I'll entertain that motion again. So there's a
Motion to defer this matter to the November 14th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Schlechter?
Yes.
Mr. Hubbard?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
And before we have everybody leave, so I think a couple things we like to say. We always, in our community here, want to encourage the dialogue and progress, and I thank everybody involved who's tried to do that. One thing we want to, I guess, give a heads up, and going into this, when you come back here, again, I said it at the beginning of the meeting, this is about the conditional use. And, in terms of harmonious and in terms of an incomplete application, when it's presented to us, if it's complete, it's considered complete at that time. We actually had legal counsel for the township take a look at that. So if there's something is not complete at application, as long as it's complete by the time this deciding body sees it, we've been given the opinion that it's complete. At this point, I still think, as Mr. Rose pointed out and some other folks, there's stuff still coming in. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it makes it difficult for us to even look at everything being complete. But I also want to say that, I hope to see dialogue and I hope to see some resolution. Look, folks, I don't know that you're ever going to get everybody sitting out here to completely agree on the design. You're not designing your own home. I think that, we're already hearing there's room for change on both sides. And I hope everybody's sensitive to that and hearing what everybody has to say, but no matter what we do, there's going to be probably somebody that, may not love what's there. I'm sure you look at some of your neighbors' homes and don't love what's there. But, we're deferring this, but I can tell you one of the things, certainly when we see this next time, we'll be voting based on a continued, obviously what has been the conditional use. So we're not an architectural committee, and that's not really what we're about. So we're trying to give leeway because we'd like to see this, come to some resolution that's satisfactory as much as can be to everybody involved. So with that said, if there's anything anybody else wants to add, and if not...
Well, just maybe a clarification. A number of you have gotten up and tried to better define the community use and how you utilize it. And Mr. Rose pointed this out, that there may be a time when it's sold and someone else may come in and use it differently. So when we look at this, we have to look at it, its use as the facility is designed and what it could be used for in perpetuity, not just your use. I just want to make sure you had that clarification.
Yeah, that's a very important point. This will keep on going. So this is not unique to these folks. So it is something, and that's why I mentioned in terms of calling this community center. I mean, at least I think we should make sure that we're looking at this the same way. House of worship is, I think pretty broadly defined. But so let's also, this is something, and I think that the gentleman left, but yeah, obviously you do have to look beyond it too. What can happen for the next owner of this property, and that's part of the reason. We're trying to bring up the highest intense use. We want to make sure down the line that this is going to go with this, and is this something that's going to continue to be consistent based on what's been voted on here and what's been presented. So hopefully that makes some sense. So I hope to see everybody back here with progress. And say something?
Yeah, the one thing when you said about potential use, is someone going to convey that to the highway for Lucas County for traffic study along that? Because from my understanding, they only go by, you had 10 parking spaces, okay, and that's how they determine traffic studies. 10 parking spaces does not, but if you can have a potential occupancy of 299, that's definitely a lot different.
But the parking requirements are, what they have to have there is to meet that kind of occupancy. So, yeah, so no, that's what they will see is what is allowed to be done there. And if the next user comes in and puts 500 people in there, they're violating, they can't, that's a violation. They can't be doing it. So they will get that information. Anything else? If not, thank you. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Mr. Schlechter?
Yes.
Mr. Hubbard?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.